So what about products? I don't think you can see this, but it says kills all known germs. Unfortunately, that's only available in Budapest. So what's the difference between a cleaner and a disinfectant? Yes. Yes. Actually, a disinfectant kills germs, some germs. A cleaner removes stuff. It removes whatever from the environment, germs, dirt, grease, snot. Are they all the same? Do we have products? So what's an example of a product that's just a disinfectant? Bleach, I heard somebody say it. Bleach is the classic example. It has no cleaning properties. It does nothing to remove dirt from the environment. And every disinfectant has its limitations. So if you're not also removing the germs from the environment, you're relying on the disinfectant activity alone to just kill them. And you can't count on that. Even for the mighty bleach, it has its things, like ringworm, that it doesn't kill at normally used concentrations. What's something...
You have to return it to cat enrichment after.
Cat toy. So happy now. Do any of you use something routinely that's just a cleaner and not a disinfectant? Soap, Dawn. And it's not that uncommon that I go to shelters where they're rotating between one day they clean and one day they disinfect. That's the wrong idea, right? So you want to clean and disinfect. If you can only do that every other day, do that every other day. But do those two things in concert. And if you're really pressed for time, then choose a product that has both cleaning and disinfectant properties. And there are some out there that are both pretty good cleaners and excellent disinfectants. But recognize that when you're trying to get rid of something that's hard to kill with disinfectant, or it's a hard to clean environment, don't rely on your combination disinfectant cleaner. Break out the Dawn or break out the degreaser. That's a dedicated product to really mechanically remove stuff. So we want to choose a product that's appropriate to the situation, what we're trying to accomplish, and then we want to choose the spectrum of effect. Who knows? I mean, I've got ringworm up there. Y'all probably know that ringworm is one of the hardest ones to kill. What are the other hardest ones to kill? Parvo. And what's the cat equivalent? Panleuk. Anyone know the cat respiratory pathogen that's hardest to kill? Calicivirus. So with dogs, we have parvovirus, and there are a few other minor little players in respiratory disease that can sometimes be a problem that are very hard to kill, that are in this group called the unenveloped viruses. But if you're in an environment where parvo is not a big risk, which includes any environment where you have dogs over 4 to 5 months of age that have been vaccinated for a week or more, you don't have an unenveloped virus that's constantly lurking there, and so you don't have to be hitting the environment with these powerful disinfectants every minute of the day, because it's just not a big risk. Or if you're in a community where you just don't see parvo much, you don't have to worry so much about using a disinfectant with that spectrum of effect. With cats, we always have to be a little bit more concerned about it because calicivirus is an ever-present threat with cats. So the good news is that the disinfectants that are reliable against the unenveloped viruses tend to be a little bit more costly, but we also don't need to use them in the kind of volume with cats that we need to use them with dogs. So if you're having to compromise on cost, better to compromise on cost in dog housing areas, especially those with dogs that are adult and have maybe a reasonable chance of having been vaccinated. You also want to think about what kind of contact time you can afford and how much organic matter is going to be present. So if you're trying to clean a gravel yard or wooden areas or areas with unsealed concrete, you have some different expectations of your product than if you're trying to clean stainless steel or a nice tile floor or your bathtub where you got your Foster litter. So choose a product that has the efficacy that you need in the face of organic matter. What's the one that's really just not good with organic matter? Bleach. Bleach again and all its ilk. So if you've got organic matter in the environment, if you've got one of those surfaces that's hard to get all the dirt out of, then you're going to want to be reaching for something other than the bleach family of products. So also penetration into porous surfaces is sort of similar. And then ease of application. This is a reality. A product applied correctly is better than a great product applied in a way that's toxic or in a way that's ineffective. So sometimes you have to make some compromises about that. And then you want to think about cost, but also keep in mind a product that doesn't work or hurts animals is a lot more expensive than any product that actually has the effect that you desire. So when cost becomes an issue, try to think about ways that you could use less product or apply it more efficiently. But in general, the product you need is going to be cost effective if you think about the disease that you can prevent. No need to rotate disinfectants per se. I see I have it on the slide and I want to mention it, and this might be the place to do it. It's not like with antibiotics where the antibiotic targets something fairly specific in the germ's life cycle, and so resistance can develop. Resistance doesn't develop to disinfectants. It attacks the germs on a much more fundamental level, so you don't need to switch them out. You might want to have some different disinfectants in your lineup just if they have a different spectrum of effect, and you don't normally deal with parvo, but all of a sudden you are, or you don't normally have to clean up areas that have a lot of organic matter, but all of a sudden you do. But you don't need to switch out a month of bleach, a month of quaternary ammonium. So these are some common options that are out there. Bleach. Bleach is close relative, but harder to say. Sodium dichloroisocyanurate. Brooklyn. Any of you are using Brooklyn? How about calcium hypochlorite, which is also in the bleach family, which is Wissi-Wash? Any of you using Wissi-Wash? Okay. Any of you using bleach? Okay. So these have the same characteristics of poor activity in the face of organic matter, reliable activity against unenveloped viruses, and both of them come with systems for application. And so in a shelter environment where there's maybe low skill on the part of staff and there's a need for a really cheap product, these can be good alternatives to bleach. There's not a lot of mixing that has to be done. The Brooklyn comes with this device called the roaming fromer, which is sort of awesome, that has soap and brushes and all kinds of stuff that can help to apply the product correctly. And same with Wissi-Wash. It comes with an application system, so you can use it in a hose end kind of context. You don't have to be fooling around with mops and buckets, and it's very cheap. Alcohol, we mostly use this in hand sanitizer context, not for environmental cleaning. Some activity against calicivirus, but not against the parvoviruses and panleukopenia. Then we have potassium peroxymonosulfate. How many of you are using that, trifectant or Virkon? A handful. How many of you know that you're using a quaternary ammonium? We'll talk more about that. I bet a bunch of you are. If you're using something in a shelter type environment, not a lot of use of this in home type environments necessarily. Anybody using accelerated hydrogen peroxide or XLHP? Great. Anyone using chlorhexidine for environmental cleaning? It's good for animals' bellies, gentle on skin, gentle on germs, not a good choice for the environment.
For tables and stuff like that, like at a medical hospital?
No. Nope. It's not reliable it's not effective against the unenveloped viruses, so if you've got a cat shedding calicivirus on that table, it's not going to be a good choice for that. So the two really good ones for tables are accelerated hydrogen peroxide and trifectant, because they've got a good spectrum against unenveloped viruses, and they also have a more rapid activity. So they're effective within 30 seconds to 2 minutes, where for a lot of the older ones, we need a 10-minute contact time, so you don't often have that time with an exam surface. So our friends, the quads. Let me just ask you, how many of you work at a shelter with a building, like a traditional building? Okay, so a lot of you. So how many of you just do rescue out of a home-based type of environment? Okay, a decent handful. I do have stuff for you also. But in a traditional shelter, this is what ParvoStop was. It was a quaternary ammonium. And if you've got onium on the label or the prefix quat. Anywhere if it's didecyl ammonium or bimethyl quaternary ammonium, that's a quat. And some of the common brand names are Rocal, 222, Kenalsol, Parvasol, Lemoquat. And they've got some really good characteristics. They can be cheap, relatively speaking, more expensive than bleach, but less expensive than some of the alternatives like trifecta or accelerated hydrogen peroxide. They are very flexible in the way they can be applied. So they can be applied through central systems or hose end systems. They've got okay cleaning activity, so they're okay cleaners for a single-use product for a lightly soiled surface. They have okay penetration into porous surfaces, so they're decent for like dog runs. But, and it's a big but. This is the study that I first encountered. 1980, these researchers were doing work on calicivirus, and they noted the calicivirus was spreading in spite of cleaning with a quaternary ammonium compound labeled as effective against unenveloped viruses. So they tested it and found that, in fact, it wasn't reliable at inactivating unenveloped viruses. And these are researchers from the Cornell Feline Health Center. They have no agenda. They don't own stock in bleach or anything. They found it wasn't effective. So the labels were pulled. They were all reformulated. And then in 1995, retested by a university. Oops, they're not effective. So the labels were pulled. They were all reformulated. 2002, retested. Whoops, they're not effective. Labels pulled, reformulated, retested. 2009, whoops, they're not effective. So there are still products out there. They've been reformulated. They're labeled effective. Do with that what you will. But if you think you've got problems with unenveloped viruses, it just makes sense to at least follow up with something that really is reliable against unenveloped viruses. So if you're stuck with quaternary ammonium, you're working at a shelter that has a central system that uses quaternary ammonium, then follow with bleach, at least in populations or during times of the year when you know that you're worried about parvovirus or panleukopenia or calicivirus. And I think I've already talked about the bleach family enough. Do people have questions about the bleach family? Yeah. Bleach can be effective against ringworm, but not at the concentration that we commonly use and that's sort of sane to use around animals. So bleach should be used on a routine basis at 1 to 32. That's 1/2 cup per gallon. At 1 to 10 or 1.5 cups per gallon applied twice with 24 hours drying time in between time, bleach can be effective against ringworm. I just wanted to make it clear that you're not killing the ringworm with your routine disinfection practices. So you might, if you know you've got ringworm, you clear out all the cats and then you're decontaminating the environment. Bleach is a part of that picture. Yeah. Don't do that. There's only 20 practices that are listed as unacceptable in the guidelines for standards of care, and that's one of the 20. It's really harmful for the animals. It's incredibly stressful. In many cases, it would be better to just not clean, just scoop in that kind of situation. If there is a need to clean, it shouldn't be sprayed. It should be applied with a mop. And trifecta or accelerated hydrogen peroxide are the two best products for mopping. They're reliable against the unenveloped viruses. They have pretty good reliability in the face of organic matter. So even if the mop water becomes contaminated somewhat, there's some chance that the remaining disinfectant is still going to work. The other thing that they can do if it's just one dog per kennel is a move down one system. And you can look on our website for more information on how to implement a move down one cleaning protocol. And you could talk to me afterwards too. That situation makes me really sad. I'll take 2 more questions and then we'll move on.
If I bleach, do I bleach, wait 10 minutes and rinse, or bleach it and dry it? Is there like a better way to use the bleach?
Yeah, so bleach does require a 10-minute contact time. So you want to bleach and then wait 10 minutes and then rinse and then dry. So it's one of, it's a cheap product. It's very readily available. It's also flexible in the different ways that you can apply it. You can get high concentration bleach that you can use in central systems, but you have to pre-clean the surface. Then you have to put the bleach on. Then you got to wait the 10 minutes. Then you got to rinse it. Then you got to dry it. So time-wise, it's more costly than some. And then did you have one more?
Between animals, what's reasonable for vaccinated animals?
For vaccinated animals, and sometimes we're in that situation where we have the joy of working with mostly vaccinated animals, not in most shelter situations. You can be a lot more casual because you're just not going to see parvo being transmitted in that type of environment. But still, accelerated hydrogen peroxide and trifectant, two that are labeled for rapid action and good activity in the face of organic matter and reasonable cleaning efficacy. So as far as a single-use product goes, those are pretty good. The other thing to think about is how often do you have to remix it. So pre-mixed accelerated hydrogen peroxide has pretty long life that you can just leave it sitting in that container, so it's a nice thing to have on exam surfaces. Trifectant has to be remixed on a weekly basis, so if you're using a lot, it makes sense. But if you just, you want to send something out in an animal control vehicle for them to spray down their cages with, you want something that's a little bit more stable. And accelerated hydrogen peroxide, good choice in that situation. But if you can't remix the trifectant on a routine enough basis, then something like a quat that's more stable. That's one of those times where non-ideal product used correctly, better than an ideal product incorrectly used. So we've already, I think I've answered most of these. Talked about the unenveloped viruses, the bleach family, accelerated hydrogen peroxide, and trifectant or Vircon. Ringworm, we talked about that. The most important thing when you're trying to decontaminate from ringworm is really awesome mechanical cleaning, just trying to remove the ringworm spores from the environment. That's going to be your best bet. So that's something to think about when you think about where you're storing your ringworm cats during treatment. Make it in an environment that's going to be easy to mechanically decontaminate. Providing effective topical treatment early on in the course of treatment will reduce the level of environmental contamination and give you less of a big job to do at the end. And then be aware that we have this great tool for ringworm, which we don't have for really any other of the germs that we're worried about, which is fungal culture of the environment. So before you go crazy and have your whole ventilation system flushed out with bleach, work with a veterinarian to take a toothbrush culture of the environment, see where you're at, see if it's contaminated, do a great job of mechanically cleaning, bleach what you can, and do another fungal culture. Organic matter, this is especially for those of you who are mostly in a home-based environment or doing rescue and transport where a vehicle might get contaminated or a couch might get contaminated. Again, mechanical cleaning is going to be an important part of that. Commercial steam cleaners, not your home ones, but the ones that you can rent or you can have come in, reach a high enough temperature to inactivate some germs. And in addition, that kind of steam cleaning process also helps to mechanically remove germs. Accelerated hydrogen peroxide and trifectant are both labeled for use in carpet cleaners. I use them routinely on my carpet, so test it out. But be aware that that's something that's nice to send home with foster parents or nice to send out with people responsible for animal transport to decontaminate vehicles and carpets and sofas and stuff that gets contaminated in the course of doing what you do and that you don't want to throw away. Same with outdoor areas that get contaminated. So if you spray bleach on a yard, it's not going to work because the yard is made out of organic matter. If you have contamination of a yard type environment, one thing you can do is just flush it by irrigating that environment and then making sure that there's a drying process that happens to the extent possible, just given the climate. Exposure to sunlight can really help to decontaminate those environments, so be cautious about really moist, dark environments as outdoor areas, especially for animals with unknown health histories. And then you can try also irrigating that area with potassium peroxymonosulfate, so trifectant or accelerated hydrogen peroxide.
If you have parvo there, how long do you think for the sun to kill?
We don't have a totally set time. You know, if it's a grassy play yard and it's Sacramento in the summertime, you're probably cool with a few months. But, you know, if it's wintertime and it's dark, parvo has survived for as long as a couple of years when it's protected from sunlight and drying. So if there's a place where there is a tree or a picnic table even, you know, you want to be cognizant of that. Of course, it's not going to be at the same dose level 6 months later or a year later that it was when the initial contamination took place, especially if you made some efforts to decontaminate. But they did this they were trying to reintroduce wolves into northern Wisconsin, and there had been parvo contamination of a den, and this researcher, you know, we might as well learn from this, and some dogs paid the price, took some dirt out of that den 2 years after the parvo, put it in with some puppies, and they all got parvo. So no joke, parvo can live a long, long time. And that's why if you have the routine need to have puppies that are going to be vulnerable and at risk for parvovirus, just don't torment yourself. This is Guide Dogs for the Blind before they spent $250,000 managing a parvo outbreak. And this is the day after. They're starting to rip up that sod and replace it with concrete. And you can get, there's nice fake grass these days that you can get. Any of you using some fake grass type products in your play yards? What are you using?
The grass.
Yeah.
It came from Costco with a big old piece, and we got it for like the small dogs.
All right. I forget the brand name, but I've talked to like Marin Humane Society is using it. True Green. Yeah, Heavenly. Yeah, Heavenly Green. So you can put that down. If that gets parvo on it, that's bad too, but it's a lot easier to just pull it up and replace it. So if you need the look of grass and you sometimes do have puppies there, just come up with a more practical long-term solution. And if you've got grassy areas and you want to use them, more power to you. Use them for dogs over 5 months of age that have been vaccinated for at least a week. And then it should be fine. Ways to make poison gases using chemicals you have in your shelter. This is alcohol. It's actually labeled bleach, and it's a quaternary ammonium based on the color. So let's not do that. Bleach and trifectant, really noxious. Quaternary ammonium and detergent inactivates the quaternary ammonium, so you can't use quats with soap. You actually can use quats with bleach, although bleach and ammonia, poison gas, so not to be confused. And bleach and accelerated hydrogen peroxide also creates a really noxious fume. So it's good to have a few things in your arsenal as far as what products you can choose from, but the more is not merrier when it comes to mixing the products. Really, it has to be as directed by the manufacturer, or just use them one at a time, rinse them before you use another product. Label clearly with the product and the expiration date, whether that's the expiration date for that actual product or whether you just mixed your trifectant and it's good for 7 days. Label it with the date when it needs to be remixed. And if you're using something that needs to be remixed routinely, just have a day of the week where you routinely remix. Or if you're using something at home, just every time you bring home a new foster litter, check and make sure your product doesn't need to be remixed. If you're using bleach, store it in a light-proof container and remix it once a month. I just noticed that in the lab across the hall from my office, our bleach is in a non-light-proof container with no date on it. This is another little cat that was suffering from quaternary ammonium toxicity. This is actually at the teaching facility at UC Davis. And he actually jumped up and showed how he had managed to toxify himself and all his kin, which is by sticking his little skinny arm up that hole and knocking over the container that held the concentrated quaternary ammonium, and it dripped down the wall, and there was just a little drip of green disinfectant. He got it on his fur, licked it off, and like 8 cats out of that room were exhibiting classic signs of quaternary ammonium toxicity. Quaternary ammonium is the one that's been most commonly reported associated with toxicity of the chemicals that we routinely use.